I had a client that was so excited to move to Boise, Idaho from San Diego because they're retired and they love camping, but then at the last second decided not to make the move. And here's exactly why they decided to not make the move. Now, Idaho has so many amazing places to camp, whether it's boondocking or established campgrounds, whether that's state or national parks, and they were tired of driving for 2 days just to go camping. They wanted to be within 2 to 6 hours of their favorite campgrounds. Now, they'd found the perfect home for them with a huge garage and even storage for a camper, but the problem was that they lived just a couple miles from the beach, and the husband is a lifelong surfer. So when it finally came down to deciding to buy the home, he just couldn't go through with it and leave the ocean and the surfing behind. Now, I love the ocean and the beach, but I just wasn't an avid surfer by any means. In fact, I even sold my surfboard that I bought in my early 20s a few years ago because I hadn't surfed in about 10 years. But for me, the benefits of living in a free state just really outweighed living near the ocean with near perfect year-round weather. Now, since I moved to Boise, Idaho from San Diego, I've helped so many people make the move here, and I get asked these top questions by almost everyone that I talk with, and that is, are you happy that you made the move to Idaho? Why did you make the move to Idaho? What was the hardest thing about moving to Idaho, and would you ever leave Idaho? So in this video, we're going to cover these answers to the questions here, and the thing is that tens of thousands of people have moved to Idaho over the past couple of years, but you really should not make the move to Idaho unless you can handle the negatives that we're going to cover. In fact, Idaho has grown in population by 115,000 people over the last couple years, and that's on a population of under 2 million people. And during the same time frame, California has lost 538,000 people. But the growth has been slowing, which is allowing infrastructure projects to start to get caught up. So if you're a little worried about that expanding population in the state that brings problems like traffic and blue state liberal politics, we're going to cover those negatives in this video. And if you're not completely turned off by the negatives, we're going to cover at the end of the video why people are moving here, and you'll get all the answers to, are you happy that you moved to Idaho? Why did you move to Idaho? And what was the hardest thing about moving to Idaho? Well, it's no secret that Idaho has been discovered. In fact, Idaho has been growing every year in population since 1988. And as I mentioned at the beginning, by comparison, California has lost population over the last few years, and I expect that trend will continue given the types of politics and the outworkings of those politics and policies that are really occurring in California. The crazy laws coming out of California, they're baffling, and I'm not surprised at all. But if you're about protecting your kids from you know what agendas and protecting your freedom, at the end of the day, it's a no-brainer decision that you gotta move. It's just a question of where to move to. Now, I get asked by a lot of people, why did you move to Idaho? Well, the biggest reason that I moved to Idaho and left California, well, it wasn't one particular thing, but it was a combination of a lot of little things that added up to my wife and I finally deciding that it was time to leave California. Now, we looked at several states, including Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, and we ultimately decided on Idaho. We had a lot of friends who were moving, particularly to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, even my best friend, but ultimately I wanted to stay closer to the West Coast and be closer to the family that I have left behind in California, and I just really love the drier climate, less humidity, and just the less intense weather that you get in Idaho as compared to Texas and Tennessee and all those hurricanes you get in Florida. There really are no natural disasters here in the Boise, Idaho area. There are brush and forest fires, but it's really more about the smoke that you have to deal with that comes from those fires. The smoke can settle in the valley and linger for days or sometimes weeks if it's really bad. But in 2023, when New York City was engulfed in smoke from the Canadian fires, we had virtually no smoke, and there's no tornadoes, no earthquakes, and no hurricanes here in the Boise, Idaho area. With that being said, all these little things, especially over the past couple of years of all the COVID policies that went into place during the last couple of years of lockdowns, San Diego is one of the worst in terms of locking down. So if you've been in California, you know exactly what that experience was like, and it wasn't as bad as San Francisco, but it certainly was up there. So we had just been completely fed up with all these different things, all the severe homelessness, the rising unaffordability of San Diego, and that coupled with BLM riots that were burning down businesses in San Diego, the constant push for the you-know-what agenda on our kids, and then simple assaults on things like gas stoves, gas-powered lawnmowers, assaults on gun rights, spiking utility bills, and the list just goes on and on and on. These things all combined to help us realize that it was time to get out of California. Now, we were at the stage in our life where we needed a much larger home for our family. We wanted a high quality of life for our children and a great place to raise our family. And ultimately, Idaho was the place for us. And so those were some of the reasons why we made the move here to the Boise, Idaho area. Now, as I mentioned, Idaho is growing rapidly. So if you're worried about the population growing rapidly here in the state, it currently is growing. And that's because of the freedom that you have here, the politics, the quality of life, and affordability. But if you're worried about the growing population, it might be a reason to stay away. And with that growing population comes growing traffic. Now, depending on where you are and the time of day, the traffic can be pretty bad, especially on I-84 or the main roads throughout the city like Eagle Road, Meridian Road, Chinden, or the roads feeding on to these main roads. Now, the freeway can get backed up, especially as you're coming from Caldwell and Nampa into the city or on the surface streets. And that's because these are originally 2-lane country roads. Now, some of the roads have been widened to 4 lanes, and some are currently being widened, and that definitely helps, but the roads can really get backed up. Now, there are some folks I know that just won't go out during rush hour traffic if they can avoid it, and I personally try to avoid rush hour traffic as much as I can. So if you're working remote or you're retired, you can plan your days around that so you can avoid rush hour traffic. But if you do have a 9-to-5 type job, you might get stuck in traffic. Now, one of the hardest things for me moving to Idaho was leaving my family and friends behind. Now, I already had a lot of friends move out, so that was becoming less of an issue, but I've got family in San Diego, and frankly, they're not moving. My dad is a 2nd-generation native San Diegan. He's lived there for over 70 years. My siblings and I are 3rd-generation San Diegans. Our kids are 4th-generation San Diegans. My parents and sister, they're just too tied up with life there to leave. And that was really the hardest thing to leave behind, was my family. But fortunately, when I can get a direct flight to San Diego, it's just a couple of hours to get there. And I do still have my California real estate license, and I regularly help people sell their homes in San Diego that are moving up here to Idaho. So I do travel down there occasionally for business. So I do get to see my family and friends and old hangouts. Now, the affordability of Idaho is certainly far less than it was a few years ago. A lot of people still think they can move to Idaho and buy a massive home for a couple $100,000, maybe pick up 5 acres of land out in the country with a huge barn, storage for their RV and other toys, or buy a huge property nestled in the pine trees for super cheap. Well, look, Idaho is affordable relative to most cities in California, and you can still purchase these types of homes, but they are going to cost you a lot more than probably what you're thinking. Large homes and land like what I just described are going to be in the $800,000 range and even into the couple $1 million range, especially if you're talking about cities like Eagle, Star, and up into the foothills of the Boise, Idaho area. You're going to find a lot of tract homes here, and they're being built like how Californians are frankly used to them, close together, smaller backyards. However, the backyards are still going to be way bigger than what you most likely have in California, and these are beautiful, large homes. You'll probably be shocked at how large the homes really are here, and oftentimes how large the backyards are. Now, let's cover some of the other cons. And so it does get really cold in Idaho. If someone tells you it doesn't get cold, they're lying to you. If you're from California, it's going to feel cold. It will get into the single digits, not really below 0, but certainly will be in the single digits. It'll be in the 20s during the day at the coldest months of the winter, and it can drag on for a few weeks. And we get something here called an inversion, where basically the cold air gets locked in, the clouds get locked in, and that can kind of drag on for a week or two at a time. But we do still get over 200 days of sunshine per year. So you will still see the sun, but you're probably going to be spending more time indoors than you're used to if you're coming from a warmer climate like Southern California or most other places in California. It also can get really hot here during the summer. In fact, in 2022, there were 27 straight days over 100 degrees. Now, that was abnormal, but it can happen. But the summer last year in 2023 was much milder, generally in the 80s and 90s and a few days over 100 degrees. We are in high desert up here in the Boise Treasure Valley area, but the summer doesn't last for nearly as long as it does in California. Now, something that you might come across is that Idahoans hate Californians. You're going to hear that a lot. Don't California my Idaho. Now, you're going to run across people that don't like Californians, potentially. They don't appreciate Californians moving here and ruining their way of life and bringing the politics with them. However, it's just not that true, because most of the people that are moving here really want to fit in with the way of life here. In fact, in the 2022 election cycle, the state shifted 5% Republican, and the state of Idaho collects data on where people are moving from and how they're registering to vote. The people moving from California are registering as 75% Republican, 15% non-disclosed, and 10% Democrat. And similar numbers out of Oregon and Washington, with 62% registering Republican and 12 to 14% registering Democrat. Personally, I found that everyone's super friendly here. I've never really actually met anyone that's been upset that I'm from California. I'm sure that those people are scattered throughout Idaho, and there's probably pockets in small towns where they're really not happy about the Californians. I just haven't found that it's been that big of a problem. In fact, the only time I had someone yell at me for being from California was a guy from San Diego that I met who had moved here during COVID, and he told me I was the problem for helping people move here from California. Now that we've covered a lot of the negatives, let's jump into some of the reasons why people are moving here to Idaho. And number one is certainly going to be affordability, and your biggest savings are going to be in utilities, property taxes, and insurance. Now, I was just texting with a friend of mine in San Diego who's been waffling on moving here for years, and he wanted to know what I was paying for all these things. So I told him I was paying $1,800 a year on property taxes, effective tax rate around 0.6%, and my home insurance was $586. He told me that he just got a statement. His property taxes and insurance are going up $1,200 this year for a total of $14,000 in taxes, insurance, and supplemental state insurance. He's paying over $10,000 more than I do just on property taxes and insurance. Then there's utilities. He sent me this screenshot showing his estimated bill in December for gas and electric was going to be around $400, and he hadn't run his heat or AC once, and his bill for water was $460. Another client I just moved here from San Diego County told me that their water bill in their water district was going up 33% this year. My gas and electric bill, by contrast, is about $150 on average, and I run it 24/7. Water, sewer, and trash combined is $160 every 2 months, so really just about $60 for water, and I get unlimited irrigation water for $160. Now, another big reason why people are moving here is freedom. There is just so much more freedom that you're going to find here in Idaho. So much less restrictions on you, and if you love guns, you can just walk in and buy a gun. If you're a resident, you just walk out with it. There's no waiting period, and no one's gonna look at you weird for owning a gun. And you can open carry or concealed carry here. And that being said, it's just so safe here. The crime is so low. Home invasions they just don't really happen. They can, of course, happen, but most likely that person is gonna be armed, so why would you risk your life robbing someone's house? And homelessness is just not a big problem here either. So if you're used to that, you just really aren't gonna see it too much here in Idaho. Now, I just love cruising around the country roads here instead of the freeway. I really do like the slower pace of life here. I just absolutely love it. My kids love it. My wife loves it. People always ask me, would you ever leave? Well, I can't say that I would never leave, but I certainly have no intention of leaving at this point. I really do love Idaho. We're super glad we're here. We love the access to the outdoors. And I think that you're going to find that you're going to like it here as well. And that's a big reason why we chose Idaho over some other states, is because there is just great access to outdoors. Just 40 minutes to an hour away, you're going to be in the foothills and into the mountains that basically look like the Sierra Nevadas that I grew up going to in California. So if you are looking to make the move here and you can handle all these negatives that I just told you about in this video, just be prepared for those before you come out. And if you are looking to make the move here, my team and I specialize in helping people relocate here to the Boise, Idaho area. I myself, as you know, moved from California, and it's what I specialize in helping you make the smooth move here to Idaho. So all you gotta do is reach out to me via phone, text, or email. We'll jump on a Zoom call, whether you're 9 days, 90 days, or even 2 years out, and we'll have that conversation. I literally have meetings with people that are 2 years out from moving here. I also meet with people that are ready to buy right now. So I love working with everyone moving here to Idaho, help people just like you all the time. So reach out, and if you're looking to make the move here to Idaho, you wanna know the best area to live in Idaho, I cover all these things in this video right here. Take a look at that, and I'll see you on the next video.